everybody. I hope everybody is well. Welcome back to the channel and to the Facebook Live. Today, I have two special guests from Hidden Voices UK. We have Zainab and Mrs. Ora. Thank you very much for joining me. I would like today to ask you some question about your organization. Why did you start this campaign? And this topic that is quite controversial, I think, in the media. And I think we have to kind of clarify some points. So welcome, Zainab. We'll start with you.
Hi.
Hi.
So do you want me to speak first?
Yes, please do.
Oh, okay. So we set up Hidden Voices UK a few years ago because many of us in the African diaspora was very concerned about how members of our marginalized communities, African communities, are being affected by FGM laws. Mm-hmm. So families would come to us for support and contact us and tell us they've been either referred to safeguarding or wrongly investigated, or when a woman accesses healthcare services, perhaps she went for, perhaps she was pregnant, should be asked a question, the mandatory reported, like mandatory question, if you had FGM, she'll say, yes, it happened to me as a young non-consenting child, as a young girl, and they say, oh, we have to make a referral. And that was based on the policies that was created. So so we found out it was a massive problem in the UK, and families all over were being affected and also being stopped at UK airports and being racially profiled. So we needed to get these women to share their stories on the media. And that's how so a group of us got together, and that's how I know Wura. And so our Hidden Voices campaign, we're all from different people, from different ethnic, we're white, black, whatever, from different backgrounds, you know. Some of us have been circumcised in the past, some of us haven't, but we all have a united aim to actually give the truth, to tell people about the misleading narrative, because the mainstream media for decades have listened to certain activists and their stories of they have been believed, and we want to tell the real stories of regarding the narrative.
So do you think FGM, because these activists are claiming that FGM is still present in the UK, are there any basis for that claim?
There's no research evidence base to say that it is. Data has been collected. It's been made compulsory for health, the public health, to collect the data, and they have been doing that since 2015. So it's very, very minimal. What they're doing is they're collecting people, adult migrant African women that's migrated to the UK, their historical data. Yeah. So if a woman that's had female circumcision maybe 30 years ago, she came from Somalia, for example, then she comes here, and then she's pregnant, then her data would be recorded as new data, and that is put on the enhanced database. And also what they do is Western white women that have genital piercings, their data is also collected and put on the data. So it's misrepresented, which then when the activists go and constantly quote this, and they keep saying, oh, 130,000 girls are at risk. Professor Alice Summer-Flaren wrote that data as well, and she compiled it, and she explains in her report, if any of them would actually open it up and read it, I think it's like a 40-page document, whatever, the FGM, she actually says the FGM is not widespread in the UK. So they're not finding young girls under 18, it's very, very minimal, yeah? They're finding adult women's historical data is being collected and then is presented to the mainstream media and to safeguarding. Oh, we have an epidemic, which, yeah, so that's how it's presented wrongly. And so what we do is we research the data. Anybody as a citizen, that you can go and do a Freedom of Information Act request, and you can write to the police or the public health, and you can say, can I have this? How many girls has been found under 18 with FGM, and you'd be shocked what you get. So you could do that. Anybody's allowed to do that, you know. But when we get the data and we look at it, it's completely not true. And what we're trying to do is educate professionals and everybody else how because it has an impact on our communities, Walala, because families are then being investigated, referred to safeguarding, being stopped at airports. You know, this is racism, you know, and it's discrimination. So
okay. So Maura, would you like to comment, please?
Yeah, I think also that I think aside from what Zainab has touched upon, we also have the dilemma of the single story narratives, which so the single story narratives, right, is the experience of activists, right? So what over the years, in as much as FGM has been identified as a harmful traditional practice, right? So unfortunately, we've had people who has told their own experience, they've told their own story and the experience of FGM, you know, their personal stories of their own experience of FGM. And what happens is those personal stories are attributed as a generalistic story, right? So for instance, in the UK, across the UK, type 3 FGM is obviously the severe type of FGM. And most of the activists, so we have some activists that has made it to the media, right? Because one of the things that unfortunately has happened with campaigns is when something is wrong, for instance, they look for people who have been impacted by that thing. So for instance, like in the case of FGM, you know, they had to identify people who have been impacted and who are willing to be the face of that, campaign. And because of the way the system works, because of the way the funding system works, everybody's looking for this superstar activist, and that's that's the best way to describe it. So they put them in front of the press. So you find out that they are the celebrity activist telling the story of, for instance, I'm a Nigerian, right? So there's this notion that because Nigeria apparently has so much FGM going on, right? So they don't even want to know whether it's type 1, it's type 2, it's type 3, or you know what. The thing is, so long as you are from an FGM practicing community, you are flagged as a risk, right? And these activists, unfortunately, whether directly or indirectly, they've promoted a single story, whereby their story is seen as, like, for instance, like Wura's story is seen as every other Black girl story or every other Nigerian story. They're not actually looking at the context of the story. Like, for instance, during the summertime, linking it back to what Zainab was saying. So during summertime, there's something they call the cotton season. Now, for me being a Nigerian, I don't know of that because I grew up in Nigeria, right? There is nothing like cotton season in Nigeria. I know there is cotton season perhaps in Kenya, if I'm right, or there's cotton season in some other countries. But because Nigeria is classed as FGM practicing country, right? So if you're traveling at the airport during summer, you will be subjected to, you know, they're going to stop you at the airport. They're going to have to give you the FGM passports.
What does that mean?
Well, FGM passport apparently is meant to explain what FGM is, tell you the types of FGM and why, you know, is illegal in the UK. And, you know, they give you like basic information. It's not the FGM passport that is the problem. It's the patronizing way around it.
Okay.
That becomes, because if you have, say, like summer period, for instance, right? Everybody travels over the summer because that's the longer holiday, right? And it's common that you have families traveling.
Yeah.
And also, during the summer, for Africans, you know, Africa is not a continent that you go to within 2 hours, right? So you can't go to Africa like you're going to Germany. Like you can't go to Africa on a Wednesday and come back on a Friday, right? I mean, if you're doing that, we should be questioning where you're getting your money from, because it's not cheap to travel to Africa. So most Africans would wait until summer period because that's a longer holiday, right, to travel back home. But they're not taking into account the distance of time in traveling to Africa. They're not looking at the fact that before we came to the UK, we have our extended families back at home, right? While UK seems to be home for us, we also have our home, which is where our extended family is. So most people want to travel over the summer, right? And what happens is the moment you step up at the airport, the chances of you being stopped at the airport, being a Black family, is 99%. Right? And that brings about the huge stigma, because then you begin to think, okay, I want to travel. What do I need to do? And if I have a daughter, for instance, if we are going to travel, my daughter, if she declares it in school, there's a red flag, because there's an automatic assumption, unfortunately, because of, again, back to the single story narrative, there's an assumption that, oh, Wura is taking her daughter to Nigeria. Oh, they're going to do FGM. They don't even know if FGM doesn't happen in my tribe, if it doesn't happen in my family. You know, it's just a case of, oh, she's going to Nigeria with her daughter. Then they would call the girl, my child aside, educate her, quote and unquote, I'm using the word educate very loosely now, quote and unquote, they will educate her about FGM. And then they tell her, oh, you know, this is what FGM means, it's against the law. Hopefully, no, you know, you are having to justify why you're going on holiday. But that's not the same for a white family going on holiday. That's not the same for an Asian family going on holiday. So for you as an African traveling over the summer, there is that fear in you. And even if you're coming back, I mean, there have been cases where people they were coming back from Africa, you know, they're so scared if their children have got scars or if there's anything on the child. You know, it's highly discriminatory.
Yes.
And at the same time, it also questions the whole equal opportunity, you know, and the racial act. Well, I mean, I suppose we'll get further as we speak, but I think the main thing is the single story narrative hasn't helped us in the community. And putting our sisters, you know, we have a lot of our sisters and brothers who are at the forefront of the fund of campaigns, right? One of the things I've always said is when you tell your story, you need to let them know it's a single story. It's not a story that is a story that is unique to you. It doesn't mean ABC has been through the exact same thing. Then I want to touch base on another bit, which is the funding system.
Yes.
Right? For me, I call it the Dragon's Den funding. You know, the Dragon's Den, right?
Yes.
So that's how the funding works, because for you to get funding for any project, right, or any campaign, you need to evidence that there's a prevalence of that campaign. You need to evidence statistics. So the shock statistics is over 250 girls in UK are impacted. Over 250,000 girls in the UK are impacted with FGM. Then the question you need to start asking, the question you need to ask yourself is, how many are the African population, right? But the funding, unfortunately, every organization who are working on FGM, it's more like business pitching. So if you look at, that's why I coined out the Dragon's Den funding, because it's more like you're pitching your business. So FGM, unfortunately, again, aside from the single story narrative, it's become a business funding model where if you understand, so it's like most charity organizations, right? You know about the funding, and everybody have to fight for funding. So it's a case of, oh, what's the topic of the day, right? FGM is a topic of the day. Now, how do I put a shock factor? We want to educate the African community, right? Oh, there's over 250,000 girls at risk, right? They're not even speaking to the African community. So you find out what they end up doing is they go to, say, for instance, like the Somali community, which have been highly stigmatized, right? So they go to the Somali community and they're like, oh, we're working with the Somali community. We're working with the Gambian community, we're working with the Nigerian community. They come up with all those stories because they know, where to get. So they put that out and say, you know what? We're working with this community, we're educating them, we're creating champions on whatever. You know, they have the different business model, the business terms, right? And of course, funding comes out. But what they don't tell us, with what those organizations don't say, is they're probably working with exact same people who have been impacted by FGM, proud to come into the UK, right? So people are telling their story based on their experience, proud to be in the UK. They're not talking about FGM experience that happened in the UK, because there is none.
Okay. Are you aware of any recent, at least, 5-10 years, a case that was in the UK and there was a prosecution?
Well, we've got right now, Mona, we have a Somali couple in Ireland. They were convicted a year ago. Their daughter had a straddle accident, and like any mother would do, is rush your daughter to the hospital. And like, for example, like if you remember, I remember my mum and my grandmother when I had my kids, and like, be careful, especially when they're riding their bikes and whatever. The little girl, the mum just washed her. She bathed her, and she just put like a gurran on for her. She didn't have a nappy. And she went to her dad, and then she fell on a toy or something, not exactly sure, but anyhow, her mum then, so she hurt her private part, and her mother and her parents took her to the hospital. And she was, I think they were charged, I think 2 years later, yeah? And they were charged after the Ugandan case, yeah? It was because the Ugandan lady daughter as well had a straddle accident. So a black family, if there lots of children have straddle accidents all over the UK, but if a black family your child has a straddle accident, what any person would do is take them to the hospital just to make sure they're okay, and then they get accused of FGM. And then what happened was this lady now she's Somali. Both the mum and dad are serving 5 years. They are desperate. They're desperate to come out. They know they're innocent. Their 3 children, alhamdulillah, has been looked after by the older sister. She's looking after all her 3 kids for her. But the family, they are trying to do what they can to appeal it, and it's really difficult because in the court case, what they do is they get all these expert witnesses from these organizations, anti-FGM activists or whatever, and they use data which is all wrong as well. And then the poor lady, even when she was in her court case, her circumcision, her historical circumcision,
the
halal was talked about, which, number one, that is
irrelevant.
It could be a trigger for somebody. It's traumatic. We should not be even talking about a woman, what her circumcision, and that's what they do as well. They ask about, oh, was you circumcised? It happened to us, a non-consenting child. That shouldn't even be a topic of discussion, but unfortunately they do, and this is racism. So the major part of the FGM laws, though, I got to say, Mona, that's having a massive impact with our community, especially Dumarka Somaliga, especially the Somalis, is FGM orders. Yeah, and it's really difficult to appeal against FGM orders. So a child would be placed on an FGM order, being referred. You said, oh, I had female circumcision as a child. You're having a baby. Oh, okay. We've got to refer you to safeguarding. They refer you to social services. Social services then, depending who you get, does the investigation. Then, oh, sorry, we think you're at risk of cutting your daughter, because the policies that was created. Yeah. So these anti-FGM charities sat around the table and created discriminatory policies against their own women. So they go on about they're protecting our women, but these activists are demonizing women. And most of these women are marginalized. They may not speak English. They don't know the system. I have shown these cases we did the Victoria Derbyshire show in January. And we also did BBC Wales in Cardiff, because when in 2018, when I saw these families, and I was running an African diaspora women's charity at that time, I said to our ladies, come on, please tell your story. I contacted BBC Wales and I said, we have to get our voices out on what's happening to our communities. We can't let these other people mislead the mainstream media and these activists. So families have been affected in many different ways. There's been 2 convictions, the Ugandan lady and the Somali family here. There's been other convictions in other countries in Europe. There's a Danish woman recently contacted me as well. She was convicted. She was coming back from Kenya and she was accused of doing FGM. Her daughter now is trying to tell her story, what happened to them, you know? So it can happen to any of us.
But there was no evidence in that case. So
the evidence is because I tell you what the evidence is, because the activists and the charities are sitting around the table with government, and they are misleading the health professionals and social workers. I always educate my social work colleagues. I tell them about the research, the data. I tell them, well, they keep misquoting Professor Alexa McFlar's data. She wrote the report and she's fed up with them misleading the data. She even wrote an article in the British Medical Journal in, I think, where it was in 2019 March. We had this event. Absolutely. And we also had what happened in Bristol. Bristol was terrible. They were families that lost their airline tickets, going on holiday, Somali families that you can imagine 5,000, 6,000 saving that money to take your kids to see your country. So as British citizens, our infringement to travel is we're not allowed to freely travel because we're going to get stopped at the airport. That is racism and it's discrimination, and we will continue to share these stories, and hopefully that is the plan. But I get probably a phone call at least once or two phone calls a week on families that have been wrongly investigated. What shall I do? This has happened to me, and I give them the advice. I don't get paid for this. I do this freely for them. Me and Wura, we do this Hidden Voices UK campaign. We've just revamped our website. We're trying to do more media stuff. We do it because we're passionate to help our women, you know, somebody, and as a Muslim woman, we have to, well, Allah, it's a duty from us, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we have to, because kids are being taken into care, FGM orders are being placed on them, and it's not fair. And everybody's got a story to tell. Even when I read the reports, I get to see the reports. So when they give consent to sharing these ladies, and they share their reports, and then we basically we can share it with the media, but the media won't identify the parents or the children as such, But if you read the reports, you'll be shocked.
Right. I think that will come to a conclusion. I would like to thank both of you and absolutely wish you all the best with your campaign. And I think a lot of people should get behind your campaign and support you, because it is touching a lot of African and particularly those who are impacted by these what do we call them? These models, you know, the government models. So we have to counter the argument and the narrative. So thank you very much, and hopefully we can talk about, you know, this campaign. How is it going again? So thank you very much.
Thank you
for having us.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Wura, because I can't see you.
Oh, okay.